Hi, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk About Skills, Baby. I am your host, Kelly Ryan Bailey. Each week, I chat with inspiring visionaries about the skills that make them successful, how they developed those skills, and their innovative approaches to improving skills-based hiring and learning around the world. Come learn what skills help you live your best life. This week, we have a special episode we are calling Happy Hour of Awesomeness. As you can see, this is the first time we've had 3 guests on, which is fantastic. 3 of my colleagues have joined us, and I'm going to have them each introduce themselves. Yustina, let's start with you.
Hello, everybody. I'm Yustina Saleh, EVP Analytics with Emsi. A lot of my work focus on how we understand skills, how we bring skills to life, how do we get insights out of skills, and all things skills analytics.
Fabulous. Stuart?
Hi, Stuart Muller. I'm Emsi's Director of Higher Education Consulting, and I cover a range of R&D related projects for Emsi that serve the higher ed space, and I get to work with Yustina a lot, sometimes to her pleasure and sometimes to her pain.
Only when you start asking questions.
I'm Gearey. I am a location economist at Emsi. I use geography to determine where the best place is to strategically set up your company and do contextual analysis around that for many of the Fortune 500 companies in the world.
Fabulous. And for those of you who have been listening in to Let's Talk About Skills, Baby, I am also the Global Skills Evangelist for Emsi. So we are all here today chatting about what is going to be amazing in 2021. So because first of all, as you can see, some of us, for those of you who are watching as opposed to listening, we are themely dressed for the holidays with some amazing gear here. I really would like Stuart to give us a quick show of his sweater. And I will describe that there are cats on ornaments for anyone who's listening. It is gorgeous. I will make sure that there is a picture shared on social media. And of course you can see my sweater. But like we said, it is happy hour. So we're doing this in an evening recording. So we're all gonna say a quick cheers to everybody. Wonderful.
Cheers.
All right, and who would like to kick us off? I feel like we have to say ladies first, so that's just going to be
Yes.
it. Yeah.
Awesome. Should I start?
Yes, jump in.
All right. So Emsi has embarked on a really cool journey a few years ago where we try to be the experts, I think, on everything regional, everything location, and everything skills. And these I feel are very strongly entwined that, as we did more and more research, you start to see that every region has its own almost DNA. And the DNA is made up of all its demographics, socioeconomic characteristics, the industries, the businesses that are bringing it together. And that DNA manifests itself in so many ways, including skills. And so that then brings in what is the shape of something like cybersecurity in New York City, and how does that look? How different is that from Columbus, Ohio? So we started building, the pieces of the puzzle, and all those building blocks were coming together. And now is the most exciting time because we are about, with all these building blocks, to bring in all the insights. And the insights would be, how can I make a decision, my next move in my career journey? What is my best next move? And maybe instead of just my next move, give me a plan, but a very organic plan that would grow with me and as the economy changes over the next 3 years. And how will that mean in terms of jobs I should be taking, roles I should be trying to aspire to, training, micro-credentialing, and all that. So these are the pieces that we want to go a lot more into. So a lot more on insights, not just data, but insights. A lot more on career planning and skill pathing, actually. Expect more and more on that. And then also on what does that mean in terms of micro-credentialing, and my partner in crime, Stuart, will talk a lot more about that. But these are the main pieces that we're working on next year. And both partners in crimes, the location partner in crime and the skills in higher ed and micro-credentialing partner in crime are right here. So there you go.
That sounds exciting. I feel like now that you've mentioned the micro-credentialing, Stuart should kind of jump in and tell us a little bit about that.
I was setting him up.
You.
Yeah, well, as Yustina said, we've embarked on this journey to essentially figure out how we can really unleash skills data, which has been something that's sort of been growing as a tidal wave over the years as we've kind of accumulated data that we can mine for skills. And the educational world is sort of encountering this in two pretty fascinating ways right now. The first way, which is sort of the trailblazing that Yustina led, which is around identifying regional skill needs. Call them skill clusters, lots of different ways of talking about this, but being able to identify in your particular region, what are the skills and the relationships between skills that are needed in certain sectors of the market. And so if I'm an educator, it's really important to be able to understand whether or not I am training my learners with the right kind of skills to succeed in the market out there. And so identifying what the market actually wants in terms of skills is the first and foundational step. And that is a nut that we have essentially cracked at this point. It'll keep growing and gathering sophistication. And as you accumulate data, you can do all sorts of new things like analyze trends over time. But the basic ability to identify at a regional scale signals for the supply of skills based on who's working in what jobs in that regional market, and the demand for skills based on the job postings that employers are putting out there, looking for talent. We can now do some pretty amazing things. And this then corresponds directly to the micro-credentialing opportunity space. You know, traditionally, educators have looked at the market in terms of programs, and that's one of the reasons why skills flew under the radar for a long time, because at the programmatic scale, a particular skill is not all that powerful a data point. Now that we are decomposing the kinds of educational offerings that we produce, programs are still very important and degrees are not going away. They're still a bedrock of economics and successful careers. But there's no question that we have this amazing new world of smaller scale educational offerings. And the skill scale is the perfect scale of data to feed that. And so right now, and coming into 2021, a major drive for Emsi is to figure out how we can translate our skills analytics into powerful suggestions for micro-credentialing opportunities or any kind of short form educational certificate of some sort.
Yeah, which I feel like is so important right now, because it's not only the stuff that's been going on for years, AI, automation, all that stuff, but now like COVID has accelerated this change. And the way, I mean, actually, I'd love Wayne to jump in here, because I'm even hearing this concept of like urban centers adjusting and changing and where people are able to live, and how that's changing their lifestyle, because it's changing into sort of this gig economy that again was like slowly moving. We were slowly moving towards there, but now we're just accelerated.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. You know, location, right? It's we know that it is cheaper to live for, especially people coming out of university, to live in, for example, I'm in Dallas, North Dallas, outside of the core, would be a cheaper place for people to live. So you get a lot of young technology workers, in North Dallas that are being tapped into as, one centroid of technology worker that is in the country. And these centroids now are starting to pop up all over the place, right there. Essentially at the beginning, 5 years ago, when we were doing location intelligence for companies, when it was becoming very popular to understand what the labor play in a market before a real estate transaction occurred, what we do is start to look at labor, and it was always San Jose, or New York, or sometimes North Texas, but that's expanding around the country. So we're able to see these nodes popping up all over the place that will be connected for companies working and driving business. So consolidation is occurring as a result. Businesses already are in a bunch of places, but they have brick and mortar in so many places they don't need that anymore. And so they're getting rid of that. And we've heard that with several different tech companies and saying, we're going to start keeping our employees at home, working from there. And I think, and this trend sort of started about having hoteling and in locations where teams could get together at times, but I think it's going to explode now, and you're going to see a much smaller footprint with respect to real estate space.
Yeah. And I wonder too, like, as I think about this, one of the topics that came up for me today was like how this will interact with the higher ed environment, right? Because they own quite a lot of real estate in certain areas, right? Is this going to be a positive because maybe the ones that are outside of a metro area, or could this be something they have to consider as well? Like, what are we going to use this space for if we're not going to have a mass amount of students on campus?
Well, and what about schools? And if this happens again, and Emsi's been working with New York Institute of Technology, the architectural class, and that's very interesting, I think. But we look at this macro view about how this pandemic is impacting communities, and working with a class, trying to come up with new ideas for that. I think we're going to see sort of, like we've seen with the Olympics. They're not just building these Olympic sites anymore. They're building these Olympic sites to be reformatted for other purposes. And I think we're going to see space being reformatted for multiple purposes, including when we have these kinds of, pandemic type events occur.
Completely.
And completely parallel to that will be, a reformatting of roles and what it means with all these transitions and all these consolidations, and the future of work will be very, very different. The future of planning and career pathing will be extremely different. And we should expect more and more hybridization of roles, that there's not going to be all that specialization, because as people are consolidating space, they will be also consolidating. You will be doing A, B, and C, and we're going to give you technology that will automate a lot of the processes, but you need to have all these new skills. So lifelong learning and an adaptation to all these changes are going to be very, very critical elements of everything that we are going into. And I think Emsi is really gearing up and in a very, very unique spot to be able to pivot and help support both higher ed institutions as well as businesses with the means to how to pivot. And of course the workforce development professionals, how would you pivot now that you have all these changes? You can't really go by what the occupation code says and what the industry says, because everything will be a mush, and it's a risk but also a huge opportunity.
Well, we see like complete industry is sort of having major shifts, but if you even think about the conversation that I had before we jumped on was just in regards to diversity, equity, inclusion, and how that's changing HR. Every company right now is readjusting their focus when it comes to that. So if you think about just the change in skills, not only that people in HR, but in leadership now, because it's like creating professional development across the board and how you react to what's going on in your company culture. And it's like, I just see that as, to me, I'm like micro-credential.
Exactly. I love it.
You talk about industries that have...
Sorry, go ahead, Stuart. Go ahead.
Well, I was in, you talk about industries that are being disrupted by these sort of this reshuffling that's going on. I mean, higher education is probably one of, if not the most vulnerable industries for this situation, right? We've had this explosion in the cost of higher education that has raised all sorts of challenging questions. And now, and particularly in the wake of the pandemic and its effects on how education is delivered, is sort of no putting the genie back in the bottle. And what was a slow burn of physical institutions adopting virtual, cloud-based, online educational opportunities, it's no longer now just a side hustle for an institution or a bit of a moneymaker. It's now necessary just to survive, and it's just accelerated a process that was happening naturally, but might have taken years. It's pretty much taken a year, and 2021 is going to be the test for how adaptable institutions are to this new reality of people all over the country wanting to take educational offerings from anywhere else in the country and pursuing that can be done from anywhere in the country. And actually, I think that's one place that Emsi is doing something that's really exciting that serves this general need. If I'm an educational institution and I want to pivot to offering micro-credentials or some kind of online short form offering, the biggest questions that arises is, well, what do I teach? What resources do I have? We can, like I said at the beginning, having these skills clusters and the data that we have, we know what is in demand, but what are the resources that institutions already have at hand that they can point in the direction of that demand? And so something that is really powerful that we have been pursuing quite intensively at Emsi is this notion of skillifying curriculum, and basically helping institutions take their curriculum content, course descriptions, syllabus documents, and much like we do with job postings and translating those documents into skills, we now do that with educational documents. And so we can help an institution build out a catalog of their programs and courses that is presentable in terms of skills. And so immediately that unleashes all sorts of opportunities for identifying where in your existing educational offerings you have course content, courses that you can turn towards this new need. Because knowing what you have and where it is the first problem before you can even think about actually.
How many schools have we worked with that like their learning content was still in paper format, so that like even just visibility across this and that concept of mixing and matching, and now when they're going to have to start thinking hybrid models like these employer partnerships, how can I just take from what I already have and create a new micro credential as opposed to take like a year-long process to create a whole new program?
Yeah. Another powerful angle is, students forever have, the age-old complaint of a student: why am I even taking this course? Like, what's the purpose of this course in my program? Well, when your course content is available in terms of skills, suddenly you're able to start providing students with kind of skill scale transcripts that every course that they take, they're able to see what they're getting out of that course in terms of skills, and in terms of skills that we know the labor market is looking for. And so we're able to better communicate to students the value of their courses and their programs, and tying it directly to opportunities in the market, which I think is a huge piece of the puzzle, because it's not just about making educational offerings available to people in formats and scales that they want, but it's actually being able to communicate the value of those education offerings during a time when there was so much sort of question about, well, where is the value and just what is the value?
Yeah. And when you think of that as, again, too, like going back to this idea that anyone can work from anywhere, when you think about location wise, right? It's honestly, this communication layer, this understanding is going to need to happen in a much deeper way, because you're not only going to be talking to employers in your community or potential learning opportunities in your community. This is global now.
I think it's, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, I think cultural fit is going to be a big issue now. So while we know skills, what about, what's the psychographic segmentation becomes important? How well do they fit into the company, and how they have the skills, but are they going to fit into the culture of the firm itself? Because every firm has a culture. And so I also wanted to comment on Stuart's, what Stuart had brought up, the idea of skills are really, we did a presentation with the Texas colleges, and he did some really cool analytics around what's in demand. All of a sudden, what's in demand are things like epidemiologists. And I even got asked about that by the New York Institute of Technology. They're all, how can we create a shorter program to get people we need now for this position, because this may happen in the future. So now we need these healthcare experts that can tell us about disease prevalence. And so, that's shorter programs now have all of a sudden become in demand. We identified, or Stuart identified, sign language interpreters as well. So
Wow.
two things that we've seen in the news and the media quite often.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
And if I may, I think we're talking about culture fit and how a lot of the businesses are gonna be pivoting. But this exact scenario will happen at the college level. Who was your student? Do you really understand, what kind of students you are serving? What are their needs? What are the needs of their communities? Regionally, in terms of their socioeconomic characteristics, who they are, what are their aspirations. But then same, like when if we're talking about micro-credentialing, like the degree a degree as there's gonna need to be some unjailing of the degree. Like it's almost like another little micro gig economy that is happening with the learning experience, where there are going to be some courses that are very, very educational, but the student path, and if we're thinking about the entire student path as I have like 120 gold mine pieces, right? That every credit is sort of a treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And you're looking at it in terms of that treasure and how I can optimize my path within my, given my aspirations and given where, what my likes. I like music, but I also want to contribute to the society in this way. And then what does that mean in terms of my region? Is because I am a member of my community, especially if that member of the community want to be giving back inside that community. What does that mean? And I think all this pose some really, really big opportunities for higher ed, but also risk, because we are thinking you need to take 20 credits here, 5 credits here, 7 credits here, good luck. Whereas we are here sort of almost destroying that paradigm altogether. And it's like, no, there's more to it than just here's a check mark that I have my 5 credits in social science and 4 credits in science. That can be like a treasure. You can be exactly who you want if we understand. So targeting the degree a little more, targeting the institution, and its own culture to who has been coming and understanding that culture more and more. We're talking about market segmentation of the students and who are they, what are their needs, and who's traditional, who's untraditional, which is also a very, very silly dichotomy. All this you're going to need to shake up in this new economy we're living, and now that everybody's a lifelong learner, what does that mean in terms of everything, in terms of who you are marketing your, your offerings to, how are you bringing them in, how are they funding their education, what are they doing, what is their cycle, and is it going to be like, a good 4 years, I'm going to be like outside of everything work related for 4 years? No, it's different because everybody's has pivoted, and education needs to pivot just as much.
Well, if you think about that, I'll just touch on the funding model piece for one moment, is that, there's all of this talk now and all of these initiatives happening around funding non-credentialed education. So as we start to see this shift as where dollars are being put, even like a micro-credential is one thing, right? But then if you all of a sudden as higher ed, if you start to have a lot of competitors that people are able to use their funding towards, this obviously changes the way that you're thinking about creating programs. And even going back to the skills, right, Stuart, like that even makes that even more important, because you're going to have to show this return on investment in the strongest of ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Wayne, I want to hear more about the location side of things, because like I realize this is probably the less skilled part about our conversation, but I find it really fascinating because of just the changing ways of our, not only in our country. I'm curious, are you also doing work like globally in regards to this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I think skills are still important, right? I mean, it's become more important globally. A good example is if you're looking for programmers, you're not just looking for programmers, you're looking for programmers with specific skills. And so we have that data now, and we're able to, I think we have over 45 countries of data now, and we're able to understand if a company is deciding to put a business operation in India, where specifically. It's a big location. Google once asked me about 5 years ago, we don't care where, just India. And so, I mean, that's impactful to a business, right? It's really impactful, and they could see that skills made a difference. And so showing them where there's 1,000 people with specific programming language helps. And I think that's the case for just about every industry. And when I talk about segmentation, when I talk about wage or the type of occupation or the sustainability of that occupation, it's all location matters. And as we compare all those key indicators, skills is built in there as well. And where are we going to get a sustainable strategic business operation for the future of our business? And that is the question that gets answered consistently.
If I may, if you can dig in a little bit on that, Wayne, especially as related to the market performance indicator that you created. I think this is a really, really critical piece in 2021, and a lot of the planning and the puzzle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think moving forward, it's going to be. I think there's a real evolution after this pandemic as to the way the business ecosystem changes and how we measure it, and those key indicators. And market performance, really does a lot more than understanding how much manufacturing is going on in a state. I mean, it's more about technology and how tech savvy a population is, and a service-based economy. And so the market performance index touches on that, and it focuses on people and people analytics. And I think that's the most important thing, obviously, to the sustainability of any company, and the competition for people and their skills. has become a lot more important as well. And I don't think I've met an HR group in the last 2 years where that hasn't been a factor. And when you can do those kind of, even when you choose, for example, if all of a sudden we choose Dallas, and with HQ2 and Amazon, it was clear that Dallas was third on the list for where they wanted to be. And that's because North Dallas has a growing technology community and a very tech savvy population, and University of Texas in Dallas, for that matter, is a very tech savvy university. And so it's pushing out a lot of tech workers. And so even when we look at that, we can't just look at all of Dallas. Where are we going to place this business operation? We have to break it down geographically and to understand the micro markets. So macro, we could say yes, New York, Virginia, Washington, and Dallas, but where is the strategic advantage in those markets? You can place a business in the wrong area, and when we talk about location, we consider how long people want to drive to work, or whether people are comfortable working at home, or where do we place that hoteling operation for our workers to meet and be innovative. So location matters, and micro locations matter when setting up a business operation, and now even more than ever, skills matter as well.
Mm-hmm. And our ability, I think, to help say a business identify, like we work with them, what is your goal? So it is very organic. It's not like a one size fit all, that here is, as my KPIs, I want these criteria in my location, and I'm very, very focused on this kind of talent, on this is my company culture, this is where I want to my team to look like, and the ability to plug in all of this with all the data that we have accumulated. Right.
Well, when you think of, we're talking about stay-at-home jobs, but I mean, that's not the entire economy. We have a whole manufacturing economy that's really important. And how is that shifting? And are we going to smaller micro businesses? And when you talk about how custom it really is to every business operation. So I think of Vroom, the company that delivers the cars on the flatbed with a bow around it. And the way we help them is we help them understand who their customer was first, which is the people they're selling to, and then did a center of gravity on where location matters, about where the clusters of customers are before they can set up their business operation. Then does that location that we identify support the business operation with both the skills and the right kind of labor?
This all makes me think of efficiencies, and that's always been the most exciting ingredient of this sort of grand endeavor for me is, and now with the locational piece, it really starts to come together, right? Like one of the things that we're really trying to do at Emsi is create a free-flowing exchange of information about skill needs from individuals. We have tools that allow individuals to log on and basically define themselves in terms of skills, educators and what they're able to offer in terms of skills, and employers and what they need in terms of skills. And, you have these three sectors, basically, if we say people, education, and work. And then those are all sort of abstractions that sit on top of actual regional realities where all of these different things exist. And forever, making any kind of comparison or inference about the flow of skills from an individual into a job, or from an education into a job and an individual, all those combinations, it's generally always been through some kind of translation from zip codes to SOC codes, or from a job title to an educational degree that you got in order to get a certain kind of job title. It was all different units of description for capabilities and needs. And the ability to describe capabilities and needs and educational offerings using the same library of skills, words, such that we can just continuously exchange information between these three sectors. And now with a geographical routing, the real long game here is profound. There's an analogy that I think about when I think about this, which is before there were trade deals all over the world, countries exchanged trade, and trade was exchanged. There was economies, and it worked. But with the advent of actual trade deals, suddenly there was much less lost in translation, all of the inefficiencies between countries or between companies. And the economies grew because of those increased efficiencies. And I see this as the same sort of thing, right? We are essentially establishing common languages across these three major spheres of supply and demand of capabilities, human capabilities, and tying them to locations where location is relevant. And what this potentially means for global economic efficiency is just, it's astronomical if we project this, certainly even 10 years down the road. I mean, it's happening now. These are projects that we're working on. But that's always been the thing that has really lit a fire in me about this work, is the amazing opportunities to improve efficiencies and how we exchange talent and education and employment opportunities around the world now. When we first started talking about this, we were thinking within the US, really. But really, it's now a global playground. And it's going to be a fascinating journey that we're on. And highly disruptive.
Yeah, and I think what is unique about Emsi in all of this is we don't treat whether it is a location or a skill as a thing. Many competitors are treating these as like, okay, these are like 3 criteria here, it meets 2 criteria, 60%, there you go. But we rather use abstract all this information into some form of a shape, and you're matching a shape rather than a thing. Like, if you're looking at a picture and this is a difference between the nose of a cat versus the nose of a human being, you will understand because of how it is located and what is surrounding it. And because of this very, very unique and specific way of abstracting the information in the document into a shape and then matching based on that rather than on things, and doing it in a very, very efficient and at the mass level, is allowing us to quickly not just match but identify big gaps, big opportunities, big insights simultaneously while we are pointing to the immediate opportunity, whether it is, the best location for you is here. But then these are all other elements that you may want to, consider as in your longer journey, or the best, the best talent, the best match for you is this person. But if you're looking longer term in terms of your objectives, that other person may match less, but actually has a lot bigger growth opportunity for your company. So that like, can you empower that every decision takes you closer and closer to your strategic goal, not just the immediate need, is something that we want our insights to more and more embed.
Yeah, and not only from an organizational perspective, like I think of this as a person, think about when we were young and starting in our career. Like, granted, we did not go into the teaching field, but I live in the New York metro city area. And if I was going to be a teacher when I graduated from school in New York City, I would have probably lived with 11 people in a 1-bedroom apartment because that's all I could have afforded. But I didn't understand the opportunity costs of making the decisions that I made at that time. So even I was not in that world, but I was living in South Carolina, and that's where I went to school. And the job that I was offered in South Carolina, based on the numbers that I was making there versus the numbers I was making in New Jersey, like, did it actually make sense for me to move to? But a lot of people don't think about this. And a lot of companies don't think about that ahead in that way in terms of their talent. And I think we're going to start to get towards that. And it's not only because of all of these data pieces, it's also because of the learning and employment record movement that's happening right now as well, because people are starting to get, control of their own data. And I'm truly seeing in all of these years that at least I've been working on this, the control has always been in the hands of the educators and the employers. And it has really started to make a shift into the person's hands. And when that shift happens, how are employers going to handle that? Because then, like Wing was saying with the various locations, I mean, your talent pool is going to look a lot different. They're going to have a ton of choice because they're going to know and be able to communicate the steps that they want to make. They're going to know that I'm not going to live in Austin to do this. I'm going to live over here to do this. Yeah. And you know what? I want to travel. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this. Like, they're going to know. It's going to make I think it's going to make a huge difference.
It's exciting.
Yeah, Yustina, that was a good analogy about the noses, because
not only because you like cats.
Should have mentioned my little doggy.
But I think a lot of folks think that we're still in like a big data place in the world, and we certainly are. We're just creating more and more data, but we've created so much data that big data itself is no longer valuable. We have to be able to extract meaning out of that data. Mm. And so back to your analogy about a dog nose and a human nose, right? There is meaning to be derived from knowing that they are both noses, they have things in common, and that they are different kinds of noses that have very different strengths and weaknesses, right? And if you just look at the data itself, you're not going to be able to make those differentiations, because it's just a bunch of data, and it takes very sophisticated analytics and still to this day a bunch of human curation in order to translate those data into meaningful metrics or meaningful values or meaning. And that's really, I think, the big challenge, not just in our space, but in all industry these days, is not being buried under data, which it's so easy to do. You just open up a tap these days and there it is. There's no escaping it. And we're all under immense pressure to utilize data, but there's a difference between using data and using meaning. And there's a big leap between data and meaning. I think that's been one of the most powerful and empowering things about your work, Yustina, and the whole sort of paradigm that our particular clustering approach has brought to this, right? It's really about surfacing meaning in a way that allows us to identify what is in common and what is different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Through the comparison of meaning, the comparison of data.
I wanted to add to that. It seems like every time I talk to somebody or I see projects being done before I get involved, they have this descriptive sort of attempt to understand, for example, where to go and set up a business, and rather than a predictive and prescriptive approach, which is the prescriptive approach is really more necessary. But I want to talk about what Yustina said too, which is the shift to creating university programs that deal with very different skills. So if you ask a programmer to solve a social problem, there can be a lack of skills and the ability to do that. And so you start to look at interdisciplinary, and that becoming much more important than it ever has been. I mean, we've been talking about interdisciplinary for, since the 80s, but it's become important. You can't just have, for example, a pandemic with doctors saying, shut down the economy. You need to have an interdisciplinary group, people with skills that understand the economy, understand education, understand medical issues, different types of medical issues, and policy people, government people, all working together to driving toward a strategy. Well, I think it's the same thing in any data-driven result, that you need people with a diverse set of skills in order to be able to use Monte Carlo simulation or machine learning and understand social science and understand how to solve problems. So I totally agree with you.
And another reason why these small scale educational offerings are so critical, right? It used to be that you couldn't be an AI machine learning expert unless you did a computer science degree. Now you can do a social science degree and take a couple of online courses and, you know, be able to bring that technical expertise in. And so it's much easier to create interdisciplinary individuals in this day and age. There's this vast crumbling of silos that's happening, geographically, thematically, you know, infrastructurally. It's really, you know, there's always going to be need for specialization, but the kinds of, or the degree of specialization is changing, and it's on a trajectory to be profoundly changed in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and for example, in companies, is the CIO really relevant anymore for any company? It's more like a managerial position now. Now it's about data and analytics. And okay, so we need a tech stack for that, and that can be managed like an office manager now. I think that is one position that is not as important now than a you know, somebody who's a chief analytics officer, for example, helping strategically drive a company.
So true. So many changes. Well, on the plus side, though, we're all getting close to the end of 2020, which I think we all want to leave behind us.
Yes, let's just 2 more days.
Focus on the future. Well, we're coming close to the end of our time, but I wanted to leave space for each of you to be able to share with us, completely open-ended, any of the parting thoughts that you would like to share, hopes, dreams, you choose. And we're always going to have to go ladies first because we all have manners.
You set me up again. Well, for me, like the dream always has been to connect the dots. Whatever the employer needs, imagine that the student / job seeker has a crystal ball into it, and vice versa. And we're able to connect the dots. And so now every individual can actually, with every decision they're making, they have full agency, but also their contribution to whatever, you know, their community, themselves, the businesses that they're a part of, is like manifold more, because with that connectivity. So my dream has always been to build a sort of more and more of the platform, not just the insights, that every individual is looking at the same kind of fact, but from their own keen perspective. And it's all adding up that really, you know, Adam Smith's invisible hand has never been true without full transparency and full sharing of information and insights. But whatever facts the employer needs to see are different, and yet there are things that both need, you know, all parties, even the workforce developer, need to see. So with that, like, how can I connect the employers, the job seeker, the student, the training provider, more and more, to become almost like a well-balanced chair that you sit and everything is working properly, you're not falling off, nothing is jittery, nothing is just stable, and you're able to perform in it. That's my hope, that the pieces of the puzzle becomes the perfect picture. On to you, Stuart.
Wayne, age before beauty.
No, you did not. Whatever.
Right. Beauty before age. I think for me, this feels like we're approaching what I think of as the true democratization of education. And education for career opportunities and life success is important, but it's not the only reason it's important, right? A country needs an educated populace to an extent, sort of a common understanding of expectations of society and reality. And education, particularly in the last 10, 20 years, has become an elite opportunity. Not everybody can access it. And it's only gotten worse. And higher educational institutions have kind of competed for students with more and more fancy offerings, which have been amazing for people who can afford it, but cut out increasingly more and more people, or just leave us burdened with enormous debt. So I'm really very excited by the notion of educational institutions that have none of the institutional expenses of real estate, of all of the stuff that have made a lot of modern higher education so expensive. So it makes full degrees, graduate school degrees more accessible. But people who don't want to go and do that traditional educational pathway can still obtain education through these other kinds of opportunities, small scale things that they can just build the skills that they need for the careers that they want. And I just think it's really, that we're on the cusp of something quite special here. And I don't want to get political, but I think quite necessary. We need to have, particularly in a world where we are all drowning in information, and it's not going to get any better. We're all going to be inundated with more information. We need a society that is information savvy and has had the opportunity to learn how to utilize and wield and manage information. And so as much as I am excited about what this does for individuals and their ability to ownership of their own careers and really unleash their professional imagination, I think that beneath that is something almost, or even more important, is just access to education. And the more the merrier. And so I really look forward to seeing where this takes us.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to build on top of that. I mean, it's education it's clear that just a good foundation, elementary school education is going to create a very strong local market. And built on top of that, and thinking about market performance is going to be, that's what we're going to be measuring. How good is that education system? It's going to start with the early years, and it's going to go to university, and anybody who's got a lot of strength in that is going to have a strong market, because data and information are important, and and we understand that at Emsi, because we're already starting to think about that market performance in an index based on technology, and how tech savvy and understanding where those clusters are and how strong those skills are in those markets.
I love it.
Thank you guys. One last quick round. I want to find out where to find, if someone wants to come and check out what you're up to. Do you each have a social platform that you are active on? Yustina, I think you're LinkedIn. Is that right?
LinkedIn, yep.
LinkedIn. Stuart,
I have a LinkedIn
where do you
as
like to
well.
hang out?
I have LinkedIn as well. I'm not especially active on it, but I'm on there, so you can see what I'm up to.
Okay, perfect. Wayne?
Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Okay, active on LinkedIn. Okay, perfect. And for anyone that's interested in learning more about what we're up to at Emsi, of course, Emsi is also active on LinkedIn, but you can go to economicmodeling.com or where we handle our skills stuff is skills.emsidata.com. So you can check us out there. But thank you all for joining today. This was a lot of fun and like a little like just off the cuff, which I love, and our special holiday treats. And thank you all for listening into Let's Talk About Skills, Baby. We are available on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify. Come check out, go ahead, subscribe, give us some feedback, give us a review, would love to have it. And of course, if you want to find me, I am on all the socials, but available mostly, most active on LinkedIn as well. So thank you guys. Hope everybody has a wonderful rest of their 2020. And here is to a fabulous 2021.
Cheers.
Cheers to that.